Welcome to TMF Podcast. I'm your host, KP. I'm a combat military veteran from Operation Iraqi Freedom. Join me as we explore the dynamic world of leadership development and personal growth, featuring inspiring stories and expert insights. This podcast is for you. Let's forge ahead together, striving, thriving, and surviving to make every formation count. Warriors, fall in. Warriors, fall in. It's time for formation. So today I have a treat for you. I have a veteran advocate who is a board member for the Home of Record organization. We're going to talk to her about that, but also too, she has a short stint in reality TV show, and she's also big into fitness. And it just so happens that over the span of our military careers, our paths sort of crossed, all the way out in Hawaii, Schofield Barracks around the same time. She is a combat veteran for Operation Enduring Freedom. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Vee Morgan. Vee, thank you so much for being on the Morning Formation.
Thank you for having me.
The honor is all mine. And when I started digging into who you are, what are some of the things that you've done just in your life and between the military and your civilian, there's just so much there. So much to go on. So I just want to kick things off and talk about your time in the military. And would you mind sharing your journey into the Army and what motivated you to serve during such a pivotal time in our history during two wars, Iraq and Afghanistan?
It was a mixture of a couple things. I wanted to kind of serve my country after 9/11. I feel like a lot of people were kind of going into the military for the same reason. Obviously, the benefits of college, and I just wanted to get out of Arizona and try something different. I feel like all my friends were doing the same thing, and I wanted to get out and travel and just get out of Arizona, basically.
Yeah, so you kind of saw it as a way out. Why not college? Why not the typical traditional modern route that most people go?
Well, it was funny because I graduated high school a semester early, so I was able to kind of experience college, and I had an essay that I was supposed to write, and in that essay we had to talk about our life, and I felt like I didn't have a lot to talk about, so I wanted to gain my own experience and have something, fruitful to talk about versus just the regular old, I work at IHOP or whatever.
Right. You wanted to set yourself apart. So was there anybody else in your family that was part of the military?
No, my dad had a completely different path. I chose to go in. I had a friend that was going into the Navy, and I initially was going to join the Navy. And as I was walking out of my car, an Army recruiter came out and said, "Hey, why don't you come check us out?" And I remember walking in the office and I saw the posters and I'm like, girls could do this. I was so naive to believe that, he's like, yeah, we have a lot of women in the military. So for me, it was kind of, intimidating, but exciting to try to do that. And I remember telling my dad, I think I had just turned 18 and I said, I joined the Army today. And he's like, you what? He's like, yeah, I signed up to join the Army. And he's like, don't you need my signature? I'm like, no, I don't. So it was kind of a shocker to my whole family. It was just very casual how I did that.
Sometimes that's the best way to go, is just to jump off the diving board,
right.
And
yeah,
just sign up and go at it versus thinking about it, because you can kind of psych yourself out.
Exactly. And that's kind of how I do a lot of things in my life.
I'm sure they were really scared because during that time, like I said, you had two wars going on. You had Iraq and you had Afghanistan, Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. So you end up getting stationed with 25th in Hawaii. Next thing you know, you're downrange, you're supporting Operation Enduring Freedom. How did that shape your perspective on leadership and resiliency, going through basic training, AIT, and then now you're in combat?
I think for me, I kind of really didn't think it would actually happen. I had people tell me, women aren't in the military, women don't get deployed, And when we got to our unit, it hadn't been activated in 40 years. So I thought, oh, this is going to be nice. And within 3 months, it got reactivated and we were in Afghanistan. And it definitely taught me how to adapt and overcome a lot of things because, a lot of things in your life you just don't have control over, and people you think you do, but you don't. You end up in these situations, and I feel like it can be a good thing and a bad thing. Like I have this fear of not knowing what's going to happen next, or kind of like not having control of what's going to happen next. And sometimes it kind of freaks me out. But I mean, when I ended up in Afghanistan, you hear all these things on the news, and then you get there and it's so different from what you're seeing on the news. And it kind of makes you realize a lot of what your government is feeding you in the news and stuff like that. I don't know if we can get too deep into that, but I kind of just lost a lot of trust in certain things,
No, I think a lot of veterans feel the same way because
Yeah.
it was the same for me too. I remember most people can't even fathom what it was like without cell phones. Like when you and I
Right.
went downrange, there were no
Yeah.
cell phones. There was no
No.
Facebook
No.
thing. We were still on MySpace, and um, people can't fathom. But I remember standing in a dining facility in Mosul, looking up at the satellite television, watching the news, and they were talking about the area of Iraq that I was getting ready to go into, and they were talking about this terrible like battle that was ensuing and going on, and I went there that night, and there was nothing, and I
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
"What?
What is
Like,
going on? Right.
yeah, where is this news coming from? Like, this isn't,
Right.
and they act like it's like live and happening right now. Um, so, and I guess let's talk about that. So, what was different about what you thought it was going to be versus what it was?
So before I left, we were prepped with different, news stations. We saw different videos, and then, people were like, "Oh, they're beheading people," and I think, you mentally start to prepare yourself like, wow, I really did get myself into something, and I got there. I first landed at Bagram Air Base, and like we got off the aircraft, and there was like nothing was happening there, But further into my deployment, we ended up in Asadabad, Afghanistan, and it started to get, a lot more, we got a lot of rocket attacks and suicide attacks and things like that. And then I was a cook, but at part of my time I worked in the medical station there, so I would see, the locals coming in, and before I got there, you hear all this stuff about the Afghan people and things like that, and then when you get there, you start to realize like these are real people. These are people that have to live here and go through this all the time, and you start to kind of, some people maybe not all, but you start to feel a little empathetic towards their situation,
Right.
and yeah.
Yeah. So the day I landed in Mosul was the day that we had the Mosul Chow Hall bombing, which a lot of people don't realize how complex that really was. It wasn't just a bombing and then quietness afterwards. It was a lot of rockets, a lot of mortars, a lot of running outside under the concrete bunkers in my underwear and my in the middle of the night, like,
All right.
and
Yeah,
then you just
you're just always on edge. Like you just never know when you could end up, going in the bunkers or going under attack, or
the wild thing about it was, I deployed so fast that like I was still a second lieutenant. Like I was still, you could still smell the freshness of my uniforms, and I was gone that quick because like you,
Yeah, yeah.
I knew I was probably going to deploy at some point, but I never imagined that would be like
That
less than a
quick.
year after commissioning. I didn't know,
Right.
like I graduated college, got my bachelor's degree, got my butter bar pinned on, went to my OBC, which it's not what it is, my officer basic course, which isn't, it's changed a lot now, but next thing you know, I'm getting stationed in Hawaii, and then 45 days later I'm in Iraq. Like,
Right.
and it's
Happens
like
so fast.
right after Fallujah, like, so the hornet's nest has been stirred up. There's insurgents all over the freaking country now. So when I landed, that was my introduction to my year in Iraq was the Chow Hall bombing, which, a lot of folks died that day. And, like you mentioned, the rockets and the mortars and stuff that followed that. I mean, it was pretty scary. And then, when I found out that I was going to be a platoon leader for a transportation company, I was going to be outside the wire almost every single night. I thought the same thing. I said, what the hell did
Yeah.
I sign up for? What the hell did I
Yeah.
get into? And I learned a lot. I grew up and became a man, I think, in
Yeah.
that 1 year.
Right.
Um, so
I
it's
think
interesting.
about people that I know now that are 18, 19 years old, and to think that I was that age when I was there is just crazy to me, you know? I was so young,
You were
but
18 or 19, you said?
yeah.
Wow. See, I was older. I was like 24, but still,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
24 to like deal with literally when you're a convoy commander or patrol commander, whatever. It's like you're in charge of other people's lives. Like your
Mhm.
planning and preparation matter, and it's at a young age, 18 to 24 years old. That's a huge weight to carry. And I think about the same thing too. Like the young adults that I know today, like would they be able to carry that burden?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely something to think about with this new generation.
So what would you say, V, that some of your lessons that you learned from your deployment, your time in the military service, what are some of those lessons that continue to guide you in your current endeavors?
I think that I've really learned to appreciate my family, because you're away from them so much. I definitely feel like I live life as if it's going to be over tomorrow. I'm always trying to do something and live my life to the fullest, you know. I
Hmm.
try to do a lot of different things. I like adventure. I like trying new things. That's why my name's Exploring V, because I definitely like to explore and try new things. But life is short and you got to treat it as a valuable thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I can identify with what you're saying as far as being empathetic towards the folks that you met when you were downrange, because it's the same thing with me. Like when the Afghanistan pullout happened, I'm sure that was very difficult for a lot of our Operation Enduring Freedom veterans. But for me, my my difficult time was a few years prior to that when I was watching ISIS battle it out in Mosul, and just to think to myself that like my unit was part of the units that actually owned that territory and we ran that territory. um, it hurt, it hurt a little bit to know that a piece of my life, a piece of my time was spent over there, and here we just completely lost it again.
That's
Um,
kind of how you feel, like it was a waste of time almost. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally. Um, so let's talk about your community outreach. So since you left the military, you find yourself here back at the table, and you're doing nonprofit uh, assistance, and you currently serving as the board of director for community outreach for the Home of Record project.
Yes.
Would you mind talking about the mission of that organization and how the members of that organization are seeking to achieve that mission?
We help veterans with transitional housing, financial assistance, or financial stability grants, and social services. So, if a veteran comes to us and they're struggling with housing or possible eviction, or they're having a hard time paying their bills, they can submit a contact form on our website, and we will basically approve and make sure, obviously, confirm that they're a veteran, because we can sometimes have people come through multiple times. And then from there, we will either try to work with their landlord and see if we can negotiate something with them. And then if not, either way, we will try to assist them through the process to see how we can either get their utilities reduced. I'm sorry, yeah, utilities reduced, or the rent reduced, or if we can financially help them with their rent or mortgage.
That's really interesting. And it's a very important subject. And I'm very thankful that we have nonprofits out there seeking to help out our veteran community, especially with finding a home and keeping that home. But what challenges so far in your experiences, what challenges do you see in the re uh, reintegration of our veterans into the communities, and how does the organization like specifically address those issues?
I think that a lot of veterans are, military before they get out, they're told all these things like, oh, you're going to get any job. Everyone's going to hire you, and I feel like it doesn't set our veterans up for success. I know some people sometimes, sometimes when you get out, they'll teach you how to do resumes and interviews and things like that. But I don't think, because a lot of veterans go in so young, they don't realize how to, get into housing and how to do their taxes and how to do this, because the military helps you with a lot of that, So we try to guide them in that process. What we do is we have transitional housing. We'll take them in, let them relax a little bit, and then guide them through the process. As a new nonprofit for us, it's difficult to get regular grants and stuff like that, because a lot of them have like a 2-year minimum minimum requirement that you have to be a nonprofit in order to get financial grants. So a lot of our grants and financial assistance that we get is from donors, from regular donors, not necessarily government grants.
Yeah, and so how long has this nonprofit been up?
It's been about a year, yeah.
About a year. So you helped set it up and everything along with another team?
I didn't. Our CEO, Gary Shell, is the one that started it. And then we have Joe Warhol. They're both veterans. And then Whitney Hale, who's also a veteran. And then we have Alexis, who is also, she's not a veteran, but she is an attorney. So she helps us with a lot of stuff that we need to get organized.
Sounds like a great team. So you help veterans out nationally, right?
We hope to get there eventually. That's our goal. But obviously you need to start locally to grow out. Right. Alexis is in California.
So you basically serve California and Arizona?
Yes. Uh-huh.
California, Arizona. Okay. What inspired you to take on a leadership role with this nonprofit, and what impact do you hope to make by being a community outreach director?
So
right?
My father actually has another nonprofit, and I was his assistant for 4 years. I grew up around his nonprofit. They help homeless addicts, and they help them rebuild their lives. And I felt like it was a very similar mission that we had with the Home of Record project. So I saw the stuff that Gary was doing on LinkedIn, and I was like, wow, this is pretty much what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with veterans. So I reached out to him and asked him if he would take any volunteers. And he said, yeah, let's talk about it. So I worked with them for about a month to see if it was a good fit. And then they asked me to become a board member. And I've just absolutely love it. I feel so fulfilled there, and I really like working with the other board members.
Right. So is that except for Alexis, the rest of the team is there in Arizona?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And they're all Marines, so it's me and then the 3 Marines.
Bunch of crayon eaters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you heard that.
I'll tell you what. You know what? Actually, when it comes to the branches, I gained a lot of respect for the Marines.
Yeah. Yes.
When I was working down range, and I think they gained a lot of respect for the Army as well. Because at the end of the day, we were both taking on a lot right there on the front lines, and so that is a whole different level of respect when you go into combat and you work with these other branches. Is what I gained with that.
I definitely have gained a lot of respect working with them. I've never worked with Marines. They're a lot more organized, I feel like, than I have experienced with other branches. But I mean, it's been really, really awesome to be a part of it.
Yeah. And so far, what does the outreach look like? How many folks approximately have you been able to help out with the nonprofit?
That is a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I would say, oh man, I want to say like 80 this year. We've helped veterans go from living in their car to getting their own house, which has been really amazing. That's happened a couple times, but yeah, I'd have to honestly go back and look at the numbers on that one.
Yeah, I think that everyone starts from somewhere, but I think the heart is in the right place to even get something like this off the ground. It is because I hear a lot of
It's hard,
folks.
yeah.
I hear a lot of folks that are like, "Oh, I really care," and the way I care is I donate $50 to someone's GoFundMe, and I'm like, try setting up a nonprofit and running a
Uh,
nonprofit.
it's
It's
funny
difficult.
because my dad, he started his 32 years ago, and I didn't see, obviously I was like a young kid. I didn't see all the hard work it takes to get a nonprofit going. And we all have been really working hard, doing outreach, making connections. We're all volunteer board. 93% of our funding goes directly to the cause. The rest is just to, for flyers and pay the bills and things like that. So we are really dedicated to making this work, and I'm just really excited about it.
No, it sounds like a great nonprofit, and I'm interested in maybe getting somebody else from the board, on the show as well to talk. And I'm all about helping spread awareness and helping these great nonprofits grow as well, because like I said, the heart is in the right place when you go through all that work, and set up something like this. But
Yeah,
V, there's more.
I truly think that when you do things with the right intention and the right energy,
Mhm.
that it'll work out really good. So I think it'll be great.
Even with this podcast, over the last 3 years that I've been doing this, almost 3 years, I've I used to just take on anybody that would contact me.
Right.
Anybody. They would
Yeah.
just message me. I'm like, sure, I'll get you on, get all this long list of people.
Yeah.
But I think over the years I've gotten better at being specific about who I want to talk to and who I want to get to know better. Um, and it's all based off the authenticity that I can feel through their content,
Right.
who they are. And then I do a little more research, and then I figure out, oh, this person is a part of this. They're a part of that. That's some real stuff. And the reason I say that is because recently I had a fellow colleague of mine who was, I guess he was invited to a podcast, and they invited him, but then they required him to pay. And I was
That's
like,
cool, Sam.
what kind of shit is that? But anyways, I was just like, so I love that. I love that the nonprofit that you're a part of, and even yourself, come from a great place. But there's so many sides to you, V, when I started looking into who you are. And another side to you is that you were involved in a reality show with your husband, right?
Yes, yeah, we were on Gold Rush. I was only on a few episodes, but I believe he was on 70 episodes. It was for gold prospecting, and basically they had the big equipment and things like that, which is really cool to see in person. I didn't realize how big it was in person. Like the tires were, I couldn't even go up halfway on some of these tires. It was pretty amazing. But yeah, it was very intense. In anytime they would come to our house or anything like that, and they would be here all day long, and I didn't realize how exhausting it was, and I felt bad because I was always complaining about, God, you need to hurry up and get home and blah blah blah. And then when I saw that he was having to work plus also getting filmed doing this, I was like, man, I am so sorry, because it was emotionally and physically exhausting.
Yeah, you realize that there's a lot more to it than just the showing up, right?
Right, exactly. It looks like rainbows and butterflies until you get behind scenes.
It always does. It always does. And that's just how it is. Even with the podcasting world for me, like I do the editing, I do the finding people, I do the interviewing, I do everything. I'm playing the instruments, I'm taking tickets at the front entrance, and I'm singing on stages, all this stuff, right? And it's
Yeah.
just it always looks like you said, butterflies and stuff. But
Editing. Yeah,
oh,
editing is
it's
a whole nother whole
yeah. And so
nother
that's
animal.
why I try to be a little more pointed with who I interview. But talk to me about your experience on the reality TV series. Your husband did like 70 shows. How the hell did he get into that to begin with? Was he already doing like gold prospecting? Um,
Prospecting, yeah.
Prospecting, yeah.
If so we first started, we would just go out and dig around, and we enjoyed it a lot, so we created a Facebook group it's called Arizona Gold Prospectors and Treasure Hunters. Now it has over 12,000 followers, but at the time it was a couple hundred, and we started posting our finds, and then pretty soon some characters from the Discovery Channel noticed that and they wanted to come check it out. And then they invited him on the show. And it was really exciting. But once you open that door, you're letting people into your lives, and people thought that they could, tell you how to live your life. And they thought they would, they would threaten us. We would have the craziest things happen. We had people follow us to different spots in the middle of nowhere. And then they would message us and say, I saw you in this area. And it started to get a little scary. So we kind of backed off from doing certain things that we used to do. Like before, it was just, we're going to go out in the mountains and explore. And then after we had my son, we started realizing like we probably need to be a little bit quieter of like where we're going and, what we're doing and stuff. Cause it started to get a little scary, but it was a really cool experience. I think that it's like a once in a lifetime experience that a lot of people don't get to do. And it was crazy because we were watching these people on the show all the time. And then we were working with them, and it was kind of surreal to experience that, But when you see what's happening behind the cameras and behind closed doors, you start to kind of your favorite show isn't your favorite show anymore.
And it's interesting because I'm thinking to myself, how does that tie in to what you mentioned earlier about the media?
Yeah.
So you're talking about reality show and the media. And it's funny because I had this conversation recently with my fiance about this, and I was talking about Instagram, and I personally know people who do Instagram, and there's a difference between what you see and what is really happening. Two different things there, right?
And I've been guilty of that too, like I'm not going to post all the negative stuff that's happening in my life because I just don't really care what other people have to say about it.
Right.
But at the same time, like you want to try to be as authentic and real as possible.
Right. And I think the challenge is when you are consuming it and you're looking at it, you have to remind yourself, like, this person isn't posting, like you mentioned earlier,
exactly.
They're only posting the butterflies, right? They're only posting those things. They're not posting all the other stuff.
No.
So
if I did, I'm sure I would lose a lot of followers.
I mean, it can be mentally like
draining. Yeah. Because you're comparing yourself to others' highlight reel, and that's not real life. Like everybody has issues. Everyone has stuff going on that's not, not broadcasted, I guess.
Amen to that. Like, a lot of us do have our issues. We do have our, our things that we're dealing with. And that sounds really interesting, though, to have been on a reality show. And talk to me real quick about how you got on the reality show, because you weren't the main character, but somehow you became the main character, right?
Well, so my husband, the last season, I went on a hike to the Grand Canyon. And it's funny because I love hiking. I go hiking all the time. I was in the military. Obviously, I should know some survival skills. The night before we went on this hike, my sister-in-law asked me to go for my brother because he wanted to go on this hike by himself. And it was 17 miles. So I said, yeah, I'll go, because I was worried about my brother, obviously. We go on the hike, and he started cramping at the bottom. Long story short, I try to hike out of there as fast as possible. I ended up running out of sunlight. I got off track a little bit, and I didn't make it out till the next morning. I had water, obviously, and some snacks and pickle juice for cramping and stuff like that. But my brother, they didn't find him for 2 more days, and my husband gets his phone call, and he was in Alaska, and he said, your wife hasn't been back from the Grand Canyon. So he started freaking out. They flew him back to Arizona, and he was flying back to help me find my brother. And by the time he got back, they had found him, but I think he was out there for 3 days, and I was out there for a day and a half. So my 17-mile hike ended up turning into 26 miles, and I only had a gallon of water. So
what lesson did you learn from that?
That your body needs electrolytes. that definitely drink more water and obviously prepare better. But
I I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mother Nature, and you know
mhm,
this from being in
yeah,
Hawaii.
yeah,
That a lot of people go on vacation to places like Hawaii, and then they just lose their minds. And being from
right,
Hawaii originally, um, I'm accustomed to the ocean. I grew up
yeah,
in Hawaii, and then later on in my life, I grew up in the middle of Ohio. But I used to surf,
yeah,
and I remember the first time I ever caught a 6 foot wave. It sounded like a train, and it was so fast. And I guess that kind of equates to Mother Nature in a sense of your hike. Because I've known people before that have done that, where they've gone out for a simple little hike or something they thought they could do, and then next thing you know, Mother Nature comes into play, and you cramp up, and the oh shit factor happens, right? So, do you think that any of your military experience kicked in during that time, and
oh,
may-
definitely, yeah.
maybe your resiliency or your
And I grew up in a small town. It was a little desert town, and my mom used to always say, if you ever end up in the desert, always eat cactus and prickly pears. And when I was out there, I was sucking on. Had no energy at all. Like I was in and out of consciousness, and I found these prickly pears, and they helped me regain energy. And I was able to hike because I literally it felt like I had cotton balls in my mouth. So it helped like revive my, you know, thirst a little bit and then my energy because it had sugar in it. It's just little things like that. I remember this is probably TMI, but I ended up taking my clothes off because I was sweating and I knew it was going to get colder at night, so I took them off to dry them out and then put them back on so I could so I wasn't extra more cold at night. I didn't want to get like hypothermia or anything. And then the water, never drink standing water. So I just put my camelback under this little spring. It took a while to fill up, but it helped me. Thankfully didn't get any bacteria or anything that would make me more sick. But those little tricks I feel like helped me a lot to just, and it's crazy because after that episode, I had a lot of people reaching out to me and saying, I've hiked my whole life and I hiked the Grand Canyon and I almost died, and people that were well trained end up in the worst situations. They're drinking the
Mhm,
wrong water, hurting yourself, getting bit by a snake or something. You don't know, you never know
mhm.
if you'll ever end up in that situation, no matter how hard, how long you've been hiking.
Oh,
So
I definitely think that a lot of folks have a false sense of confidence
I
when
did,
it
yeah, definitely.
oh, I mean even the
Yeah.
pros do, and it's you have to humble yourself and realize that there are things out there that are bigger than you and stronger than you, and Mother Nature is definitely one of them.
It's funny now when I go hike with my friends, I have a GPS tracker, I have electrolytes for everyone that comes with me. I have a life straw and
Yeah.
everyone laughs at me like, "Yeah, you're prepared now."
That's all it takes is that one time, man, that one time and to get, punched in the mouth, and next thing you know, now you're like taking lessons, right? So,
Yeah. I will
um
never do that again.
well,
I'll hike, but I prepare this time.
the one thing that helped you out, I'd say, would probably be your physical fitness, because I noticed on your Instagram that's a big thing for you, right?
Yeah, I love lifting. I actually was an avid hiker before. I would take my son on my back and hike all the time. But I truly think that lifting weights really helped me because you're so sore out there. Like you have to have the strength to hike 26 miles. But I read, have you ever read David Goggins or heard about
I've
David Goggins?
I have, yes.
Yeah, so he has this book, and I read his book right before I left, and I truly think it helped me get to the next level because he has this quote in his book, and it says, "Find your why," and that's all I can think about was thinking about my son, thinking about like someone having to tell him that I didn't make it out, and in my head, I'm like, did I really try all I truly had to get to the top? And so I just kept pushing along, and my heart, I could feel my heart racing really heavily, and I was like, well, if I die, trying my hardest, at least I tried my hardest. But
Mm.
I made it out. So
It definitely pushed you to some higher limits, that's for sure, it sounds like.
yeah, definitely.
So overall, like fitness wise, would you mind sharing some of your fitness philosophies or your routine? Earlier you mentioned that you were all into cardio, and then you found like this whole new thing, this passion in lifting. Can
Yeah.
you talk to us about that and how you come up with a balance or a routine to stay motivated?
I recently, I've been working out with this trainer for a few years, and, people will say, oh, you don't need a trainer, this, and that. But I feel like you truly have to find what works for you. And, if somebody likes yoga, if they like, Pilates, if they like CrossFit, then if that's what is getting you to your best fitness, then do it. But for me, I really do like the family environment of the gym that I go to, My Way Fitness. And so they're really big into lifting weights. I do cardio, I'll walk and stuff like that, but it's not my only focus. I noticed that when I did start lifting heavy, I started noticing my body composition change drastically, and I just felt like I was in a better mood. I just felt like I had more energy in all aspects of my life, so I really enjoy it. Whereas cardio, felt like I was a little bit more. I didn't have as much energy. I mean, not, I mean, it's probably different for everyone, but for me, it was. I just feel like weightlifting changed my life in all aspects.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey, right? I mean, it's not
Yeah.
just a one way. There is no instruction manual on this is what fitness is and this is what
No.
exercise is. It's different for everybody.
Right. And you just have to find what works for you. Like some people, I learned how to count macros with my coach, and I actually took courses on it and stuff. And I felt like that was the best for me because I was eating out all the time and I wasn't really, I felt like I wasn't able to enjoy myself a little bit. Whereas with macros, I was able to enjoy myself and try different foods. Um, and I love food because I was in culinary school. I mean, everyone loves food, but I went to culinary school and I learned how to cook and stuff. So I like to enjoy different types of food.
Hmm.
But some people like the carnivore diet and some people like, you know, vegan diet, and you just got to find what works for you.
You know what the underlying thing, all that you mentioned is discipline, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Discipline.
definitely.
And I think that's lacking from today's younger generation, to be honest with you. And
Right.
physical fitness is no longer a thing. I'm 44 years old, and I'm proud to say that I can do good pull-ups.
Yeah.
I can still get on the floor and do good 50 push-ups, good ones, not the little bullcrap ones, but
Not the Marine push-ups. I'm just kidding.
the Marine ones. Oh no, those are more like the Air Force ones, aren't they? Like,
Oh, okay.
uh, no,
I'm
but
just kidding.
so I mean, overall, like, would you say that fitness has been part of your journey, but how do you encourage other veterans or individuals to embrace fitness as a tool for mental and physical well-being?
Like I said, I feel like whatever works for that person, I feel like some veterans will find, working out by themselves, they enjoy that more. For me, I like the team aspect because it keeps me more accountable. I'm able to, talk a little bit, and I'm a little competitive, so it helps me to, step it up a little bit.
Hmm.
For me, it helps with, I struggled with depression for a major and PTSD for a majority of my adult life. So I feel like it kind of keeps those monsters at bay. I mean, obviously, you could still struggle with all those, even if you're working out every day. But if, you're working on your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health, I feel like you have a lower chance of letting those things get to you. And I really want to encourage any veteran struggling with that to try to, change your diet first and try to lift weights and see how you feel about, after that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, physical fitness, at least when I was in the military, same for you, it was foundational. Like it was like the most important thing that you had to do every single morning, right? I don't know if it's
Yeah.
changed or not. I've heard that it has, but um I think that it has a lot to. I think the mental and the physical aspect have that connection with
Mhm.
one another, and
Exactly.
like you
And
said, it.
and recently I've been getting into breath work and hypnosis and things like that, just to kind of, because your brain is so strong, you know.
Mhm.
And I think people don't realize that. They don't realize how strong your thoughts are, how strong you have to change your outlook on things, because that could definitely affect every aspect of your life.
Yeah, and the one thing that I was talking to someone earlier about this is breathing. Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, folks don't realize whether you're doing yoga or you're shooting or you're in a combat situation and you're shooting real rounds downrange, or you're at a tournament doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or you're lifting weights. They all involve focusing
Breathing.
on breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Running. Hell, running is
Exactly.
too. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
a lot of times people can't run properly because they don't know how to breathe in your nose, out your mouth, in your nose, out your mouth. It's a
Mm-hmm.
meditative thing almost. And so
Yeah.
that's I think that has a lot to do with helping us veterans kind of cope with our demons, and then also too like cope with the reality of. I always say the hardest part for me was not necessarily what happened down there; it was coming back here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, physical fitness is huge in that aspect.
Yeah. And I've been taking breathwork classes recently, and I've realized, like, your breathing is so important. Like you were
Hmm.
saying, it really does. It's really part of everything you do. You want steady breathing for anything you're doing.
Yeah,
So I would love to like take a course on that, on breath work.
yeah, it's definitely something that I think people underestimate quite a bit. Now, it sounds like your transition out of the military. You're still on that journey, sort of
Hmm.
transitioning out. We all are, right? We're always transitioning. We're always like learning something new each and every year. But what was your transition from the military to civilian life like? There's three things on this podcast that I have been focusing on recently, and it's resiliency, adaptability, and survivability. And so we talked about your survivability when we were talking about your experience of your hike in the canyon, um, but your adaptability. So what was it like for you to transition out, and what advice do you have for other veterans that would face a similar transition such as yours?
When I got out, I think the important thing is to find out what you truly want to do. I think the first thing for me was I went straight into culinary school, and I love cooking, but you want to find something that's going to sustain you for the long term. Take your time to figure out what that is. Maybe go find a small job, and then if you want to go to school, um, kind of take your time on that and spend your time figuring out what you want to use your GI Bill on, instead of just picking the first thing that comes to your mind. And that's one thing I wish I would have done differently.
Yeah, I always tell folks that are in the service, if you manage your career properly, meaning on Fridays and Saturday nights, you don't just hit the clubs and the pubs and the bars,
Exactly.
but you actually take
Mhm.
your ass to the education center and spend at
Exactly.
least one of those nights over there knocking out gen eds or doing something. That
Yeah.
is the best thing to do. And I always felt like as a commissioned officer, even especially as a platoon leader, that it was my job to kind of intercept the young 18, 19-year-old kids that would come in with the aspirations to get their college done. It was my job to kind of push them in that direction because I think I've always felt like my biggest enemy was my lack of maturity. I always felt
Yeah.
like, and I think for the most part, I never really respected the wise man or the wise woman. But now that I'm older, I respect that concept a lot more than I used to.
Yes, definitely.
So
Definitely.
try to
I
listen to
I, I
folks that are
wish
ahead of
I
me.
would have invested more in real estate, because I feel like that has been really profitable. And I think a lot of younger veterans should consider looking into that and figuring out how they could take advantage of their VA loan.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. My last guest was Robert Tolan, and he actually talked about he specifically helps veterans with VA home loans. Um,
Wow.
and V, back in the day when you and I were in the military, we didn't have the internet wasn't what it is today. Like
No,
today, there's
no.
no excuses, right?
Yeah, you can make money from your computer.
Yeah, and you can find people that can help you with just about anything out there. So like you want to connect with someone that is authentic, well then just see what they're about on their social media, talk to folks and then connect with them. But back in the day, hell, you would have to personally know someone and just hope and pray that you're at the right place at the right time and you can meet that person
Yeah,
live.
go to the library.
Right, go to the library, right? And pull out that damn
The
drawer and
index
like go through
card.
the cards,
Yeah.
right? I feel like I'm old now.
I
But
know.
so V, just to wrap things up, who would you say has inspired you the most throughout your journey, and how have they shaped your path?
I would say my dad probably. He spent, and it sounds crazy, but he spent 15 years in prison. He was homeless, and now he's a multimillionaire, but he did it just from perseverance. Like he had so many people telling him that you can't do that. And it was at 55 years old when he decided to change his life around. So if he could do it, anybody could do it. Everybody
Wow.
has an excuse of their background. Oh, I can't do this because I have have past, or not, I can't do this because I'm too old. I can't do this because of whatever. But it's an excuse.
Yes.
It really is. If you truly want something, you'll go for it, and you just got to be persistent.
That definitely sounds like an inspirational story, and is maybe someone I might be interested in speaking to as well.
Yeah.
You are surrounded by a lot of interesting people, V.
I know my life is my life is crazy, I'll tell you.
Well,
But
I mean, even your husband having done like what 70 episodes on
yeah.
reality show, and he's also a veteran too, right?
Yes, he is. My father isn't, but my husband is. Yeah.
Right.
My husband was in the National Guard.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. V, was there anything on this show that I didn't cover that you'd like to talk about before we wrap things up? Anything that I didn't mention or talk about that I might have missed?
Nothing I can think about right off the bat. Nope. But maybe
Is there
come
any
back.
message? Is there any message out there? Is there any message that you'd like to put out there for our veteran community or any current service members that are that might be listening?
Of course, I want to drop our Home of Record project. If anybody is struggling with transitional, or if they're struggling with transition out of the military, if they're struggling with eviction or anything like that, reach out to the homeofrecordproject.org, and we will be able to assist you with that.
And I want to make sure that I'll post this on YouTube and I'll put this on the podcast as well. But I want to make sure I post your link. So I'm connected to you on Instagram. You are on LinkedIn too, it sounds like, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you are on TikTok. You added me to TikTok recently.
Yeah. I do have a large following on TikTok, but those are kind of silly videos.
But that's, you know what, that's awesome because you've unlocked something. Like that's not easy to do.
Well,
So-
it's great, but now they're talking about shutting it down. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But
Yeah.
at least you're multi-platform, so you're across different platforms. But I'll make sure that I put homeofrecord.org on there as well. So folks out there, make sure you help spread the awareness for that nonprofit. And then also too, maybe I can find you on YouTube with that episode.
yes,
Where you
that one's a
were.
little bit harder to find, but I'll send it to you.
Yeah, if you do, that'd be great. I'd love to put that on there as well, because folks out there listening, my whole point of interviewing you, I found your content very interesting. Everything from your TikTok to your Instagram is I wanted to get kind of behind the scenes and get to know who you are and what you're about. And as I started digging and I saw the involvement with the nonprofit, which I'm also involved in a nonprofit with Act Now Education, it became a little bit more like, hey, this woman is very multifaceted and
I
very
appreciate
professional.
that.
So no, the honor is all mine. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to interview you. Before we round things out, anything else that you'd like to put out there?
Nope, that's it. You can follow me on Instagram, Exploring V. That's
And
it.
on TikTok, as long as it's
Yeah.
still up, right? They're saying like
Yes, it is, yeah.
January or something like that.
Yeah, let's hope it is. Exploring V on all platforms, or V Morgan, Veronica Morgan on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, V, I'll definitely do some sound bites off of this. Thank you so much for your time and the awesome story,
you.
the
I
backstory
appreciate
behind
it.
you. You're a fascinating person as well as you're surrounded by fascinating people. But
Thank you. I
let's
appreciate
let's definitely stay in touch.
it. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, for everyone else out there, as always, I want you to stay tuned, stay focused, and I want you to stay motivated. Warriors, fall out. Thank you for joining us on TMF Podcast. We hope you found today's episode insightful and inspiring. Our mission is to help you strive, thrive, and survive in all aspects of life. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe. Please leave us a review and share it with your network. Stay connected with us on social media as well, and visit our website for more resources. Until next time, I want you to stay tuned, stay focused, and stay motivated. Warriors, fall out.